Good afternoon, I'm Gaurav. Welcome to this session where we will be going through the VA section of the JIPMAT for the past few years. I'll first set the agenda as we move on. Now, before I begin, I'd like to congratulate everyone who's, been hanging in there till this point, because this would be the last of the IPMATs, the last of the exam where you'd be trying to get into an IIM for an integrated program. So for some of you, this would be the culmination of a 2-year effort. For some of you, it would be a 1-year effort. And for the past couple of months, since your board exams have gotten over, most of you have been working really hard, and finally the day is here. In a few days, you'll be taking the JIPMAT. So I'll tell you what we'll be doing today, what the purpose of this session is. So primarily, we are looking at past papers starting 2022 and onwards. Now, the agenda would be mainly twofold. One is to have a last minute practice of, let's say, grammar, some vocabulary, of some passages, some paragraph based questions. Secondly, we'll try to look for some trends in question types in these past papers so that we know what to expect. This marathon will also give you an idea of how the difficulty level of the VA section of the JIPMAT is different from that of the two other IPMATs. So we'll start with JIPMAT 2022, the VA section of JIPMAT 2022. Now, as we move forward, I'll read out the question on the screen and I'll give you some time to answer. Now, some questions are going to take very less time for you to answer, and some questions might take more time as you read passages, as you read some of the critical reasoning questions that are there. So I'll know when you guys start answering what your pace is, and we'll try to keep it engaging. So I'd want everyone who's attending to answer as we move along. So let's begin with the first question. So this first question is a figure of speech question. It's an important question type. You have studied figures of speech in the arithmetic and grammar module. And as you know, if you had to study figures of speech, you just had to memorize the definitions along with a couple of examples, so that when you come across a question in the exam, you can make the connection and identify what it is. Now, here your statement is, my beloved is like a red rose. And your options are simile and metaphor, simile and alliteration, simile and hyperbole, metaphor and imagery. So I'd like you guys to start answering now, and I'll be keeping an eye on your responses so that I can see how well you have studied figures of speech at least. So what do you think? What is the answer to this question? Now, as you do that, let me tell you, I think the actual line is, oh, my love is like a red rose. That's the actual line from a poem by Robert Burns, if I'm not mistaken. So there are two figures of speech in this line. Now, one, as you can obviously see, is a direct comparison. Now you have simile and metaphor among the options. And the camel is the ship of the desert. That would be an indirect comparison. So, and that would be a metaphor. But when you use words like or as to compare two things, he fought like a lion in the battlefield. So then that becomes a simile, and we have the word like in this question. So simile has to be one of our figures of speech, and the second one. So actually it's supposed to be red rose. So that's a repetition of the R sound at the beginning of the words. But even with red rose, our second options, we have to let go of hyperbole first of all, because there's no exaggeration here. And then imagery is a figure of speech where the description appeals to your senses. So if someone calls it like a scarlet rose or a crimson rose with velvet petals and thorns beneath them, and then if you describe the smell, if you describe the touch, if you describe how it appears, something which appeals to your 5 senses, then you would call it imagery. And that is not happening here. So our answer here would be simile and alliteration, direct comparison and the repetition of the R sound. And yes, whoever has answered has gotten this right. Moving on to the next question. Fill in the blank with a suitable preposition. He broke blank in the middle of his speech. Now, although the question type mentions a preposition, this question actually tests your knowledge of phrasal verbs. You have studied phrasal verbs in the numbers, algebra and vocabulary module, and there is a whole chapter of phrasal verbs in your vocabulary builder, and by this point you were supposed to memorize all of them, because memorizing them is what generally helps you the most when it comes to the exam. So phrasal verb is a verb followed by a preposition. Break off, break apart, break down, break for. So what do you think? Right. Yes, so the sentence indicates that he became emotional, he became sentimental in the middle of the speech. Now, to break off, OF as opposed to OFF is not a valid phrasal verb. Break apart can be accepted, but here since we have discussed that we need a phrasal verb for becoming emotional or sentimental in the middle of his speech, because that was because maybe the topic that he was talking about made him emotional, we have to go with C. He broke down in the middle of his speech. All right, so everyone has answered this correctly. Moving on, pick out the part of the sentence which has an error. If there is no error, mark D. A white rhinoceros is close to extinction. So white rhinoceros is A, is close is B, and to extinction is C. Now, some of the questions and their options I have tweaked a little bit so that I can illustrate how you eliminate options moving forward, because see, in the verbal ability section, unlike the two remaining sections, elimination is paramount. So in most of the questions today, that includes vocabulary, grammar, reasoning and RC, we will be figuring out why the remaining options are incorrect. Now this error, yes, I need more answers here. Right, so this error is based on the usage of articles. So as you know, there are two types of articles, definite and indefinite. And when we study articles, we focus more on the definite article the. There are some rules about where you must use it and where you must omit it. And those rules are tested in the exam often. Now, one of those rules is when you use a singular noun to refer to the entire category of that noun, you use the definite article the before it. Here you're talking about all of the white rhinoceros that are close to extinction. So you have to use the before the noun and not the indefinite article a. You need the definite article the, because that's the rule. A singular noun representing the entire category has to take the before it. And that's why A has the error. And yes, all of you who have answered it correctly. Moving on to the next question. Pick out the correct sentence in passive voice of the following sentence. We compelled the enemy to surrender. Right, now as you guys answer this one, let me tell you, this is one of the easiest topics in grammar. And there's one very, very simple rule that you have to remember when you change the voice from active to passive. And let me just reiterate that rule. So the voice of a sentence is active when the doer is before the action, when the subject is before the verb. Now, all sentences, whether they're passive or active, they have this format that there has to be a subject and there has to be a verb. So an easier way to remember it is when the doer is before the verb and when the receiver is after the verb, the sentence is in the active voice, and the doer is called the subject, the action is called the verb, the receiver is called the object. Now the rule is when you change the voice from active to passive, the tense must not change. That's the whole crux of this topic. Unlike, let's say, direct or indirect speech, where the tense changes, in active passive voice the tense does not change. When you eliminate rest of the options in this question type, you do it because there would be an incorrect tense in those remaining options. So the rule is the verb to be in the same tense as the main verb followed by the past participle of the main verb. Let me explain that. Compelled, that's the main verb. In the active voice, the tense is simple past. So the verb to be in the simple past would be was, and the past participle of the verb, the main verb, would be compelled. So our answer would be the fourth option. As all of you have correctly answered, the enemy was compelled to surrender by us. Remember this rule very clearly. You eliminate A because of is compelled. You eliminate B because of the wrong spelling of the word compel, first of all, and it's not in the passive voice. And you eliminate C because of the tense. The past continuous tense was compelling. The tense must not change, and the rule is the verb to be in the same tense followed by the past participle of the main verb. And of course, there has to be by, the preposition by in the passive voice, followed by what is known as the agent. The subject from the active voice becomes the agent in the passive voice, and the object from the active voice becomes the subject in the passive voice, because irrespective of the voice, the sentence must have a subject and a verb. That's the basic requirement of a complete sentence in the English language. All right, moving on to the next question. Which of the following sentences is correct? Now, when sentences are more or less similar in form with minor differences, you need to be able to read all of them parallelly. It's called vertical linear analysis. It's a very technical term, you don't need to know that, but on your screen you must be able to read the statements parallelly, and as soon as you find an obvious grammatical error in one of them, you can eliminate that option. And then you narrow it down to 3, and then you find one more inexcusable error, then you narrow it down to 2, and then you get the answer. All right. Yes, all of your answers are correct, because he was selected the very best player of the tournament. Now, best is already in the superlative degree. You do not need the adverb very in that sentence. More best definitely is illogical. You do not have the comparative and the superlative degree together like that. More better is also incorrect, because better is already in the comparative degree, and more better, more taller, more shorter, these usages are definitely incorrect grammar. So very obviously our answer here is D. Moving on to the next one, rearrange the following parts of a sentence in order to make a meaningful sentence. By this point, you may have gotten an inkling of how the difficulty level of the VA section of the JIPMAT is different from the other exams that you've already taken till now, right? That realization could vary from one student to the next, but broadly I feel the consensus should be that the VA section of the JIPMAT is substantially easier than even, let's say, the VA sections of the other two IPMATs, and that's a good sign. Good shirt, sir. Thank you, Siddesh. Thank you for the compliment. All right. So here we do not even have an entire paragraph which has been jumbled. It's just one sentence which has been jumbled. And the most important thing is, in the JIPMAT, for this question type, you have options, meaning it should take you like half the time to solve this question compared to if you were to solve it without options. And you still look for the starting point, you still have to connect pairs. Now, for 5 years, I was sure when I decided to go abroad that my grandmother would be upset, and at her age, one could never tell. So, I was sure that my grandmother would be upset. PR looks like a very prominent pair here. Now, even if you look at all of the options, it's not there in the first 3 options, it's only there in the last option. And that realization is enough for you to quickly mark it as your answer and move on. Because if you have options, the options have been given to you there so that you can rely on these insights and eliminate as quickly as possible and move on. So this is still a very easy question, even though it's a jumbled sentence question type. So the sentence should be, when I decided to go abroad, for 5 years, I was sure that my grandmother would be upset, and at her age, one could never tell. Okay, moving on to the next question type. At this point, I'd just like to say that if I just hope that you have been getting enough time to read the questions, but if there's anyone who feels that they need more time and that we should slow down like a little bit marginally, just let me know. But I think we haven't come across any difficult questions yet, so I think the pace is fine, but do let me know if you have anything to say about it. Now, this is right. This is a very important topic, and this is a very typical question type which has been asked over the years across all of the exams that you take, the entire set of exams that you take. One more thing that helps you during the exam is, although you know that it's a spot the error question, it's a question related to grammar or one of the topics that you have studied in the arithmetic and grammar module, the first thing that you must try to do is try to relate it to the topics of subject verb agreement, pronouns, tense, modifiers, parallelism, punctuation. This question is related to the topic of subject verb agreement, and it's a very typical question, but it could be misleading if you, it could be a trap for you if you are not aware of the rules that apply here. Now, there are two rules that are relevant to this question, this statement. Neither of the players blank adequately prepared for the tournament. Now, the first rule is, whenever two nouns or pronouns are connected by a preposition, like the preposition of, you always look before the preposition and not after it to identify the subject, because we have to look for the verb. That's what the blank is for. Always remember this rule, right? Repeat this like 10 times in your mind. Always look before the of. Always look before the of. Always look before the of. Or always look before any preposition that connects two nouns. And here that would be the pronoun neither. Neither is a distributive pronoun, which is always singular. So the plural noun players is not the subject. The singular pronoun neither is the subject. So we need the singular verb is. That's the only singular verb that we have among our options. So that's the option that we will go with. And most of you got this question right, got the answer right. But yes, I can see that a couple of you have fallen in that trap. Now remember this, always look before the of. You're not talking about two players, you're talking about one of them at a time when you use either, neither, each, every, the distributive pronouns. Remember this rule very clearly. All right, moving on to the next question type. Fill in the blanks with a suitable form of verb. No sooner did the chairman blank than the directors put up their demand. Now, if you have to come up with a rule for, this example, so the rule would be, you start with no sooner, then you have the helping verb, that would be did, then you have the subject, that would be the chairman, then you have the base verb. So this is what you have to remember. This is the key to be able to answer this question. The base verb is the verb without any s or ed after it. We have done this question type enough times that your gut could lead you to the right answer here. But if you remember this rule, it just gets easier. Right. So our answer would be the base verb arrive. No sooner did the chairman arrive than the directors put up the demand. And please remember, no sooner does not go with when, it goes with than. Barely goes with when, scarcely goes with when, hardly goes with when, but no sooner goes with than. That could be another error of parallelism that you may have to spot in one of the questions. All right, moving on to the next one. When people are blank, as long as they hold fast to the language, it is as if they have the key to their prison. Now, this is a bit challenging. Read the sentence properly. Read it twice if you have to, read it thrice if you must. First, understand what it means, understand the context. The context is in the second half. It is as if they have the key to their prison. And be very careful. This is a tricky question. Let me see what your answers are. Yep, I can see that most of you did get it right. You did interpret the sentence correctly. when people are blank. As long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they have the key to their prison. There is some metaphorical prison that they are in. Now, first of all, that does not make them prisoners right away. But the sentence says that as long as you hold on to your language, your identity, you can break free of any chains, any bounds around you, any restrictions that have been put around you, your mind, your thoughts, your thinking, your vision. As long as you hold on to your language, your traditions, your culture, your identity, the root of your origin. That's what the sentence is. Now, the answer would be the word enslaved. Now, enslaved does not fit grammatically, the base verb. Unslaved is not a word, but there's a difference between enslaved and prisoners. So, prisoners would mean, so you may be a prisoner because let's say you've committed an atrocious crime. Perhaps you may deserve that imprisonment. But enslavement would be against your will, something that erodes your dignity, something that you try to get out of, something that you didn't deserve in the first place. That's the difference between the connotations of these two words, and you have to understand that difference. And that's why the answer to this question would be enslaved. All right, but almost all of you got it. That's good. Moving on. Pick out the correct sentence in passive voice of the following sentence. He said to me, now this is direct to indirect speech. He said to me, comma, what are you doing? So change the direct speech to reported or indirect speech. Let me know what the answer is. So obviously now that we have come to direct and indirect speech, unlike active passive voice, the tense changes. Of course, there are some exceptions to that rule. Sometimes the tense does not change, but the tense inside the quote generally changes and the pronouns generally change. Let's say a person was talking about himself or herself in the first person. When someone else reports that quote, the pronoun would change to the third person. So pronouns and tense change and certain other words change. From direct to indirect speech, here becomes there, now becomes then, yesterday becomes the previous day, etc., etc. All right. Right. So I can see that all of you, almost all of you have answered this one correctly. Now, the answer would be the third option. He asked me what I was doing. Now, the reporting verb can change. You change it from said to asked because the quote was a question. You can change the reporting verb to asked, inquired when it's a question. You can change it to ordered, commanded when it's an order, or requested when it's a request. Certain codes justify the change of the reporting verb. Now, the pronoun is wrong in A. So we eliminate A because of he. We eliminate B because of that and what. That and what do not come together in the reported speech. And there's no reason to use Y in the last option. So these are enough for us to eliminate the remaining options here. Sorry, I'm so sorry. So moving on to the next question. Yeah, choose the correct alternative. Which of the following sentences is correct? I'd like to wait here for a few more seconds. I seem to be way ahead of the actual live footage. So I'll just take a few seconds here so that you guys can answer properly. Okay, which of the following sentences is correct? The coach ordered the player. Now, I asked you to start reading these sentences parallelly. As soon as you start reading them, together, you'll realize that order makes D incorrect. So we eliminate D here. So we narrow it down to A, B, and C. The coach ordered the player for makes B wrong, and we are left with A and C. The coach ordered the player to not leave the camp. The coach ordered the player not to leave the camp. And although this is a tricky one, I can see that most of you have answered it correctly. Now, what we have here is this verb, to leave. And to plus verb is called an infinitive. To plus verb. Now, when you separate these two words and you put another word here, that's called splitting the infinitive. And it's not advisable that you do that. So to leave has been split because not has come between the two words in A, and that's why we would eliminate A as well. Not to leave is more correct. All right. So that gives us our answer as the third option. Moving on. I prefer reading a book blank watching a movie. Now the rule here is very simple. Now, of course, you'd eliminate then here, but had this been than, that would have been a typical trap option. Now, prefer is followed by to. I prefer hot chocolate to green tea. So prefer does not take than. I prefer hot chocolate than green tea is incorrect. And you do not use over with prefer, you do not use against with prefer. So you have to spot the prepositional error in the remaining options. This question asks you to find a suitable preposition, but this is a very fairly oftenly used word, and by now you may have come across this error numerous times in your practice material. So you would know by now that obviously prefer has to go with to. So the correct answer is I prefer reading a book to watching a movie. Have some people answered incorrectly? Some of you have. You do not use over with prefer. Remember this, you use to with prefer. So you could use over with other words. I would choose to read a book over watching a movie. Now that sentence could be correct, but typically prefer has to go with to. You have to remember that. Okay, moving on to the next question. Pick out the part of sentence which has an error. If there is no error, mark D. Please read the sentence. Give me the answer in the live chat. Yes, there's one very obvious error in one of the parts. Very, very obvious. Come on. Right. Yes, people have started answering and the answers are all correct. So you take time off work. When you take a break, you take time off work. What you needed is OFF. And that was the trap there. So very obviously the error is in B, and all of you have answered this one correctly. Good job there. Right. Moving on. Pick out the correct sentence in passive voice of the following sentence. Now take a moment to remember that rule that I just mentioned. The verb to be in the same tense as the main verb in the main statement, the question is were helping, followed by the past participle of the main verb, and then the preposition by, and then the agent. Remember this difference. The agent, that is the former subject from the active voice, always takes the preposition by before it. instruments in the sentence, take the preposition with before them. The robber shot him with a gun. He was shot by the robber with a gun. Robber is the agent, so you use by. That's the doer of the action, and the gun is just the instrument, so you use the preposition with the instrument. All right. Yes, all of you have answered this correctly. Some boys were helping the wounded man. So the first thing to do in an active passive voice question is identify the main verb and its tense. The tense here is the past continuous tense. Were helping the wounded man. Now, yes, as all of you have correctly answered, the answer is B. The wounded man was being, the verb to be in the same tense, past continuous, helped, the past participle of the main verb, by some boys. Why did we eliminate the rest of the options? No by in A. The tense is wrong. No past continuous in C. It's the present tense, and here it's the simple past tense, no past continuous in D as well. So that's why the answer was B. Okay. All right, so now we have come to some vocabulary questions. Now, since we are doing entire papers, entire sections of a particular year at a time, as we move on to 2023 after this one, you will face all of the question types together. So I didn't want to club the questions together because my intention was that you should get to go through grammar questions and then vocabulary questions and then RC and then some other paragraph based questions and then be able to start all over again. I just felt that would be better than clubbing all grammar questions together and then all vocabulary questions together. Otherwise it would become very monotonous. Anyway, so here we have come to vocabulary. Identify the word which means the same as sift. Now, we'll be answering this question. We'll imagine that you are taking the exam right now and you have this word on your screen. And had you encountered this question during your self practice, of course you would have looked up the meaning, figured out the answer. But then when you can't do that, you try to figure out the tone of the word or whether you can find a root word in it. Sometimes in synonym antonym questions, you also identify the part of speech. Now, identifying the part of speech here could be very helpful because sift, if you know how to use it, is a verb. You would sift through many documents to look for some information. Calamity is not a verb. Worthiness is not a verb. Problematic is not a verb. Calamity and worthiness are nouns. Problematic is an adjective. Only examine is a verb. Now that alone should help you figure out the answer to this question. But if you can remember this phrase and then come up with a sentence which has this phrase, sifting through something, papers, documents, information, files, folders. So you're going through them looking for something. So the word examine would fit the sentence, would be a suitable replacement for the verb sift. I think some of you got it right and some of you missed the mark. Now, I don't know why some of you have answered calamity. Perhaps you were thinking of a rift. I'm not sure. Let's move on to the next question. Because this is a marathon, we'll focus on endurance rather than intensity. So we'll keep a uniform pace so that we remain engaged. So we'll be moving on quickly as soon as we figure out an answer. But if there are any doubts, if you didn't understand something, please feel free to ask me in the live chat. All right, this question has a sentence with 2 blanks. From the choices, select the pair of words that can best complete the given sentence. Now, the main thing that you have to do in the fill in the blanks question is look for the context and look for grammatical clues. And as the number of blanks increases in the sentence, it actually becomes easier for you to answer the question because then you can eliminate better. Anyway, figure out what those clues are. Take a moment, give me the answer. Right. Yes. The answers are all right. They are all correct. The doctor blanked special course of antibiotics on the patient to blank the disease. Now I have two clues here. This is the contextual clue. What do you do to a disease? At first glance, you don't prove it. You don't relieve the disease. You also don't fake out a disease. Faking out is deceiving, misrepresenting, making a false impression. But yes, you combat it, you fight it, because you try to get rid of the disease. And my next clue is this preposition on. Used a special course of antibiotics on, gave on, prescribed on. None of these pairs is correct, but administered on is correct. But here you would be able to answer this question correctly simply because of the disease, and these three words would be very easy to eliminate. All right. So our answer here was the last option, administered and combat. Next one. Okay, so we are truly blank to the many hands and hearts that made this book blank. One more thing that you can do very well with fill in the blanks questions in vocabulary, something that you can also do with reading comprehension or critical reasoning, is frame shadow answers. Framing shadow answers is very useful in this question type. So what words would fit in the two blanks? Words that aren't necessarily from my options, but they could be, of course, because sometimes the shadow answer the answer becomes just really obvious. We are truly blank to the many hands and hearts. We are truly thankful enough to the many hands and hearts that made this book a reality, that made this book possible. These are my shadow answers. Now, among the options, let's see what you guys have answered. Right. So just because you have an obligation towards someone does not necessarily mean that you are thankful. But yes, you can technically use obliged in this sentence, but what you cannot use is plausible. Plausible is something which is sensible, logical. That's not what I want. We are truly honored. Yes, I can use that. To the many hands and hearts that made this book feasible. Again, feasible, like a plan can be feasible, some logic can be feasible, a solution to a problem can be feasible, an idea can be feasible. Again, it means logical or sensible, just like plausible, but you can't use it for the book. Grateful, yes, to the many hands and hearts that made this book possible. Yep, I can go with it. And flexible, I don't care if the book is rigid or flexible, but thankful. So the first words, they could all fit, but I can easily answer this question by eliminating options based on the second blank. But you'd be able to do that better and faster if you framed a shadow answer first. Okay, so the answer to this question was the third option. Moving on to the next question. Pick out the correctly spelt word. Now, in your vocabulary builder, there is a chapter on words that are frequently misspelt. And so when they ask you to pick out the correctly spelt word, or when they ask you to identify a word that has been spelled incorrectly, it's unlikely that you'll come across very difficult words that you're not familiar with. They would be everyday words that you would have encountered a lot across the years. So do not expect difficult words when it's an incorrect spelling question type. Ooh. Okay. And right, so here I think we have hit a little glitch. So two options we can eliminate very easily. Gratuitous. That's not a word. So we'll have to go with, so probably the word was meant to be, sorry. Gratuitous. Something that is unnecessary, unjustifiable, gratuitous violence in movies. And of course, occasional has been spelled incorrectly because there's only one C there. But looks like we forgot to introduce an error in the fourth option here. But then the tick is also in the right place. I'd have liked to delete a C or an L, something like that from the fourth option for us to be able to eliminate it. Let's call that an error. Now, when that happens in the actual exam, remember, an objection can be raised, and when they accept that objection, you get the marks and everything. You know the deal. All right, so here our answer would be the second option. All right, moving on. Fill in the blank with a suitable word. I believe this is from Hamlet, Shakespeare. But it's a very well-known quote, more of a proverb. Brevity is the sole blank wit. Now, brevity is the noun form of the adjective brief. And wit means intelligence. If you're witty, you're smart, you're clever. But if you want to be witty, if you want to make an impact with your words, you can't be verbose. You can't make these long-winded statements. You can't use too many words. You must be brief and concise so that you can have a greater impact with your words on the person who's listening to you. So the soul of wit is brevity. It's a very well-known quote. It's a very well-known proverb. I'm sure all of you are aware of it. Whoever has answered it correctly. So yeah, we can move on. Brevity is the soul of wit. Okay, so we have come to slightly longer options here. Which of the following sentences is correct? Read all the sentences carefully. Point out at least one error in all of the remaining options. Take a few moments. So we're looking for the correct sentence here. So we have to eliminate the errors. Though my grandfather is very old, if you had just put a comma here and if you had deleted this word, the sentence would have been correct. But though and but, two different conjunctions that connect clauses that are opposite to each other are not required in the sentence. Though plus but is not a thing. So that's why we have eliminated A. My grandfather is not inactive for his old age. Not inactive. It's a figure of speech called lightities, but again, no reason to use it. In fact, you had to make that contrast in the sentence. You had to tell me on the one hand that he's old, and you had to contrast that with the fact that he's also very active. So all you're telling me is that my grandfather is active for his old age. That does not make the point. There was no need to use not and inactive together. My grandfather is without activities but his old age. This is incoherent grammar. That does not mean anything. This is incorrect sentence construction. So we must eliminate it. Although my grandfather is very old, he is very active. Right. Although serves the purpose. This is your first clause. My grandfather is very old. This is your second clause. There is a comma. He is very active. Everything is in the right place. The sentence conveys its meaning properly. So our answer for this question type would be D. Yes, all the answers are correct. Next one. The following sentence is divided into three parts. One of the parts has an error. Identify the part which has an error. If there's no error, mark D. Hmm. Yes, can I have a few more answers? The admission ticket entitling her to win a prize. Of course, when you read this sentence, something should give you pause. Some alarm bells should start ringing in your mind because the error is clearly here and this word is incorrect. The admission ticket, it gave her the privilege to win the prize, and the correct usage of the word would be entitled her to win a prize, which means our error is in the second part. The answer is B. All the answers are correct. Good job. Moving on. Yeah, the next vocabulary question, a person belonging to the same period. Now, literally, if you, this is a question type which you can answer if you have studied root words properly. There is an entire chapter on suffixes, prefixes, and root words in your vocabulary builder. There is literally a root for same, and then there is another root for period in our answer. Um, no, I don't know why, but some of you have answered incorrectly. There's more variation than usual among your answers for this question. Now, uh, our answer is very obviously the third option, contemporary. So, co is together or same, and tempo is time. So, belonging to the same time is contemporary. Predecessor would be an ancestor. Contempt is hatred, dislike. Contemptuous is someone who's experiencing that hate or dislike for someone else. You would be contemptuous of someone, if you hate them. And successor would be someone who comes after you in your lineage, maybe in your family, which is the opposite of predecessor. So, but see, same was co and period was tempo. So our answer was contemporary. Please go through the chapter on suffixes, prefixes, and root words. It's very, very useful. It could make a huge difference. Moving on to the next question, fill in the blank with the most appropriate word. So technically this is a grammar question, but I'm sure it's very easy. Please give me the answer quickly. Yes, starfish with shotgun. This class is till 5 p.m. at max. Let's see. We'll see in the future. So all we have to fear is fear ourselves. Someone has answered ourselves. Know myself. Know yourself. What we need here is called an emphatic pronoun. It's the list of pronouns which have the word self in all those pronouns, and it's the same list for reflexive pronouns. But we need to emphasize fear in this sentence. All we have to fear is fear, and we have to emphasize it with an emphatic pronoun for fear, which is not a person. So we can't use myself, himself, herself, yourself, ourselves. We have to use the word itself. It's an impersonal noun that's used for things, objects, not people, most abstract nouns. So all we have to fear is fear itself. That's the answer. C is the answer. Next. Rearrange the following parts of a sentence in order to make a meaningful sentence. Again, we have a very short sentence. It's not difficult at all. Should hardly take you a few seconds. And plus we have options. Remember, as soon as you figure out even a very small minute clue among the statements, you must immediately look at the options to figure out if you can eliminate anything. Now, there's one very obvious pair here, held, responsible. So there is very obviously a Q and P pair. That's not there in the second option, it's not there in the fourth option. That went wrong. You cannot begin the sequence with R. So by the process of elimination, you end up with the third option as your answer. You may end up answering this question this way, or you may first look at the sentences, the statements, rearrange them in your mind, and then figure out the correct answer. So this pair, even in jumbled paragraph questions with much longer sentences, there is always something known as the most prominent pair. There's always the most prominent pair that always stands out in this question type, something that you figure out perhaps even before you figure out the rest of the answer, and that was QP here. Anyway, so the answer was the third option. We were told that we would be held responsible for anything that went wrong. All right. It's B, SQRP. We were told that we would be held, that went wrong, responsible for anything. It's not B, it is C. Next. We'll do RC2, right? Yes, we'll do RC2. We'll solve a few passages, come back to vocab, grammar, again go back to passages. We're hoping to keep coming back to passages at least thrice. But see, it's necessary to cover the remaining question types in JIPMAT as well. Now I'll tell you something. Passages in JIPMAT, they're at least short. Sometimes they can be challenging if they're abstract, but they're at least short. They're not too long. And the questions are fewer following each passage. And you'd probably be more comfortable with JIPMAT passages than the passages of the other IPMATs. But let's see. Find out an appropriate synonym for the word ebullient. So ebullient, you first have to figure out the tone of the word. It's something you feel, it's something you are. When are you ebullient? I sincerely hope that all of you experience this feeling, this emotion in the coming weeks when you get acceptance calls from your target, the institutes that you're targeting, the institutes that you're coveting. So then you'll be ebullient, you'll be very excited. And the synonym of ebullient here would be energetic. So athletic refers to the shape, the form of your body when you're agile. Indolent means lazy. Lethargic also means lazy. So this would be the most challenging question type in vocabulary, like you either know the word or you don't. But this word does appear in one of the class exercises in our numbers, algebra and vocabulary module. If you have revised those class exercises enough times, and if you were taking the exam this year, you'd be able to answer this question quickly. Next. All right, so we have come to our first passage. Now, yes, ebullient means full of energy. Energy that you experience or you feel when you're in a situation that you really like because you've heard something that excited you, you're with people that you really love, you're at a place that you really enjoy being at, that the excitement can come for a variety of reasons, but yes, that is what it means, full of energy. Sir, what do we do if we don't know the word? So, see, start by identifying the tone if you can, then the root word, then the part of speech as I said. And if it's that confusing to you, then it's better that you skip it if it is an exam with negative marking. But if the exam does not have negative marking, quickly mark something and move on. Because if you don't know the word at all, there's no point in wasting time in trying to remember something that you don't know. So it's just better to mark a random answer and move on. If the exam has no negative marking. I would not suggest taking that risk in exams with negative marking, because it's not that luck always favors you on exam day in that manner. Right, just take a couple of minutes to read the passage. Now, sometimes if a passage, if you feel the passage is very dense, if you feel the passage is very challenging, it just means that you need to read it twice. And that would be a first fast reading and a second slow reading that helps you engage with it better and helps you follow the thought flow better. Just take a couple of minutes quickly to read this passage, and then we'll discuss this before we move on. The class is still 5 p.m. or by whatever time we manage to finish all the questions here. But see, this is the final leg. Like, it's like you're going to take the exam in hardly 3 or 4 days. So I'd kind of advise you to attend this session till the end, because that's probably going to cover your practice for the entire week, and then you can focus all of your time and energy on taking mocks instead. Because analyzing the past papers for an exam that does release the official papers is very important, as I said in the beginning, to look for some trends in the question types. And it's going to help you revise some rules in grammar, it's going to help you revise some meanings of a few words. So till whatever time this session is, I suggest you attend it, but it's scheduled to end at 5 and we may be done sooner also. Please go a bit faster. All right, we can do that. Just let's discuss this passage once. Okay, so I guess everyone would have finished reading it by now. Let's read it together. Man's growth from barbarism into civilization is supposed to be the theme of history, but sometimes looking at great stretches of history, it is difficult to believe that we are very much civilized or advanced. There is enough of want of cooperation today as we see one country or people selfishly exploiting another. Man in many ways has not made very great progress from other animals. Still, we look down upon the insects as almost the lowest of living things. And yet, the tiny bees and ants have learned the art of cooperation and of sacrifice for the common good far better than man. If mutual cooperation and sacrifice for the good of society are the test of civilization, we may say that the bees and ants are superior to man. Right, so the main takeaway from the first paragraph is that there is enough of want of cooperation today as we see people exploiting one another. People need to cooperate with one another more. Second paragraph, the main takeaway is again towards the end, because if we use cooperation as the standard, then even bees and ants would be better than us. And then the next paragraph, the old saying goes as follows: for the family, sacrifice the individual; for the community, the family; for the country, the community; and for the soul, the whole world. It teaches us the lesson of cooperation and sacrifice for the larger good, which we may have forgotten. How wonderful it is to see men and women and boys and girls smilingly go ahead on the path of progress without caring any pain or suffering. Well, may they smile and be glad for the joy of serving a great cause which is theirs, and for those who are fortunate comes the joy of sacrifice too. So yeah, it makes the same point once again. It teaches us the lesson of cooperation and sacrifice for the larger good, which we may have forgotten. That's the takeaway of the last paragraph. Hold it. Um, just quickly give me just one quick moment. I'll just be back in a few seconds quickly. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the questions now. What is the theme of the above passage? What time is JIPMAT at? JIPMAT is at 3 to 5:30. So after this passage, as we'll be moving on to 2023, we'll increase our pace. And then as we move on to 2024, we'll go even faster because you guys would have gotten even better. Can you please tell me the answer to this question? What is the theme of the above passage? Why aren't there any answers? All right. Okay. So they're coming in now. Right. The theme of the passage is man's moral and spiritual development. So when the passage says that people should cooperate with one another better, and it's because of that lack of cooperation they exploit one another. And if you think about it, then even insects are better than us. And then what's the use of being humans if we don't live by some morals? And those morals being, as humans, we should all kind of care for the greater good, and that requires you to be empathetic with other people, help them when they need your help, and that's where the cooperation angle comes in. So that's your moral and spiritual development. Now C or D. So here I guess if D is the next best option that you think could be the answer, my problem with D is idealism. So being idealistic is being impractical, trying to achieve ideals that are unrealistic, basically, that you may not be able to achieve at all. So man is aiming too far and trying to achieve something that perhaps is not within his capacity. That is not what is being discussed in the passage. Rise and fall of empires and man's search for truth, and what that truth means and how it affects man's life would be a completely different discussion. So enough reasons for us to eliminate options here. Next, animals are superior to men because of their very easy question. Yes, that's right. Cooperation. That's the most important key word from the passage. Whenever you finish reading the passage, you must always be able to answer the what and the why, as I always say in class, the central idea and the primary purpose, and both of them require you to identify the topic properly, and you will do it if you have not misinterpreted the passage. So, physical strength, not an important keyword from the passage. Rude and blind behavior does not compare animals to men. Yes, people can be rude to one another, exploit one another, but animals, no. And carefree life, that animals live a carefree life because they don't have to pay bills, they don't have to study for exams, they don't have to give interviews. Carefree life does not, of course, animals have a carefree life, but that does not make them superior to men. What makes them superior to men is their instinct for cooperation, right? So our answer was the second option. Next, what is the basic reason of exploitation of one man by another? Okay, now see here, let's go by elimination. Education. Lack of education sometimes erodes your morals. Such a thing has not been mentioned anywhere in the passage. So, because you are uneducated is not the reason you would exploit another person. High ethics. If you have high ethics, in fact, you would refrain from exploiting others because you would consider it unethical. So that's not the basic reason of exploitation of one man by another. Weakness of some people. As in, a person spots another person that appears weak, and somehow this first person gets encouraged to exploit this other person just out of some weird, evil, nefarious tendency to exploit weak people, and that this can only be done with weak people is not true according to the passage. The basic reason is moral turpitude. For this, you have to know the meaning of the word turpitude. This is a good example of how vocabulary practice, even in exams, even in questions where your vocabulary is not directly tested, can affect your score. So moral turpitude is complete lack of morals, where your morals, nothing pings in your mind when you start exploiting another person because you don't have morals. Nothing in your mind, your conscience doesn't tell you that what you're doing is wrong. The other person also has some dignity and you should also respect them and you should cooperate with them. No. So complete lack of morals is moral turpitude, and that is what makes your answer to this question A. So for that you had to know the meaning of the word turpitude in the first option. Right, it should be A, as other options don't fit to the passage. All right. So yes, they are irrelevant to the passage. You're correct. Some questions like this can be answered by elimination, and some others can be answered by selection. This one you could answer by elimination if you didn't, even if you didn't know the meaning of the word turpitude. All right. How can we be truly civilized? Again, wealth does not make us civilized. Power does not make us civilized. Higher education does not necessarily make us civilized, as in that has not been considered as the key to being more civilized or to having better morals. The whole passage revolves around that most important keyword of cooperation, which is mutual help. So, right, the passage barely talks about wealth, that's true. The passage, sorry, barely talks about weakness. That's what you said. I read it as well, but yes, the passage does not talk about wealth, power, and education as keys to being civilized. So we'll go with mutual help because that's what cooperation is. And thus, the answer is D. And we have finished the passage. Now, you know what happens in an actual marathon, like an actual marathon where you run? Let's say it's a 42-kilometer run, a full marathon. So you spend the first 5, 6, 7, 8 kilometers, depending on your physical shape, in achieving a rhythm in breathing and your steps, and then you stop panting, you stop gasping for air, struggling for air, and then you achieve a good pace. So now we have reached that point. We have been warmed up, and now we will slightly increase our pace. So pick out the correct sentence from the following sentences. Let's go. So as soon as I get a few answers, I'll point out the correct answer and then we will move on. Now, after did, didn't, does, doesn't, you have to give me the bare verb again, and that would be like, not liked, liked, but hadn't is not part of this rule. Didn't is. So the answer to this question is D. He didn't like to attend the lecture. He haven't liked is incorrect grammar. You cannot frame a sentence that way. It wouldn't mean anything. Hadn't like does not mean anything. Didn't liked does not mean anything. Easy. Next. Pick out the antonym of the word jocund. The tone of the word is positive. I'll tell you that much before we move on. The word is related to the words joke, jocular, jovial. Yeah, VA seems easier than QLR. Yeah, it could seem easier because it's easier in general, or perhaps you have practiced so much by now that it just comes easily to you. I mean, look at the bright side of things. So my question has a positive tone. My answer should have a negative tone. So someone who's always jovial, someone who's always in a merry mood, in a good mood, in a jovial mood would be jocund. So I need a word which is negative in tone, and there's only one negative word among the options here, which is, I've been getting wrong answers because somehow you may not have spotted this word in the instruction. Antonym. You are supposed to pick out the antonym of the word, not synonym. Right. That is gloomy. Zealous means enthusiastic, positive word. Cheerful is a positive word. Optimistic is a positive word. Only gloomy is the negative word. Sir, the question is not there. It's there. I can see it on the screen. Yes. Now, again, that give. So here's one. We have one more very important takeaway here. Do not lose marks because you did not read the instructions properly, because there's nothing that can justify that kind of loss, and it would be called a silly mistake, but then you're not silly. So don't make that mistake. Please read instructions properly. Pick out the part of the sentence which has an error. If there's no error, mark D. It's above the line, fine, but somewhere it's going to be there on your screen to indicate what you're actually supposed to do. So don't blame the line. As I haven't seen all evidence, I am reluctant to make a judgment. Now, one little trend that I've noticed is often this question type where a sentence has been divided into three parts, often but not always, but very often, it's based on an error related to articles. So I think that would be a good point to start to begin with, as in to start looking for the error. Now, here your answer is A. I haven't seen all the evidence. I'm reluctant to make a judgment. Clearly, the noun evidence needs the definite article the before it. It would sound off as you try to read it, right? As I haven't seen all evidence, I'm reluctant to make a judgment. No, you need the definite article the, and your answer is A. Next, pick out the correct sentence in indirect narration of the following sentence. He said, "How wise I am?" Question mark. So, right, for the previous question, the answer was A. What's the answer to this question? We eliminate D because of the word regret. There's no regret in the answer. And this person was talking about himself in the first person, and I am reporting that quote. So I should be talking in the third person. I cannot report his quote in the first person because it's not about me. So I eliminate A for I eliminate C for I eliminate D for the inappropriate reporting verb regretted, and my answer is B. Next, pick out the antonym of the word dissimulate. Now, that is a verb, dissimulate. It has a negative tone. When you dissimulate, you do something wrong. So when you dissimulate, you hide, you conceal something, you omit information deliberately, perhaps to mislead, misrepresent, because you have intentions when you dissimulate. Uh, Concealed would be a synonym, but we have to look for an antonym. Circulate, unrelated. Concrete, unrelated. My answer is the verb reveal. Dissimulate means to be covert. Yeah, kind of. In this case, you had to know the meaning of the word. Like, it's not easy to know the meaning of this particular word using root words or anything else. If you've used this enough, if you've come across it during your practice, then you would know the meaning and that's how you'd find the answer. Okay, next. Choose the best definition for the underlined word by searching for context clues in the sentence. The attorney wanted to expedite the process because a client was becoming impatient. Ayo, chill accounts, what's up? All good. What's the answer to this question? So if you are impatient, you would accelerate the process. Expedite, you can think of it as the root word is ped for feet. You know, when you want someone to work fast or move fast. Different languages, even in the vernacular, have expressions that have something to do with feet, not literally, but metaphorically. Why don't you move your feet faster? As in, why don't you move faster? As in, why don't you speed up the process? Whatever it is. Accelerate is the synonym. Evaluate, reverse, justify, none of them are synonyms of the word. All of you have answered it correctly. Next. Read blank, nor to believe, but to weigh and consider. Suitable form of verb, but expedition, expedite, pedal, they're all related to the root word for foot or feet, and you're not using feet literally. Wipe together, I want shout out to, so here's a shout out to wipe together. Pedometer, right, that's right, that's also based on the same root. Okay, now this is a parallelism question. To believe, to weigh and consider. Starfish with shotgun, I can't follow you. I don't know what that means. So what do I need in the sentence to maintain that parallel structure? Very obviously, to contradict. To contradictory, I don't want the adjective. Contradict not to doesn't mean anything. Read contradict not to is incorrect sentence construction, and to not is in the wrong place. The infinitive has been split again. To believe, to wait, to consider, to contradict. Now they're all parallel. Moving on. Next. Okay, so we have come to a critical reasoning question now. Select the statement that best supports the author's point, supports the point. This question does require you to frame a shadow answer. Now this, I don't think this would be a particularly difficult critical reasoning question, but critical reasoning questions also require you to frame shadow answers properly. In fact, the more you think about what the answer should be, the more you're refining your critical reasoning skills. Remember this in the future, if some of you end up taking exams for your masters where critical reasoning could be a very prominent question type. Critical reading is a demanding process. To read critically, you must slow down reading with pencil in hand, perform specific operations on the text, slow down reading, perform specific operations, mark up the test with your reactions, conclusions. When you read, you become an active participant. So the paragraph best supports the statement that critical reading is a slow, dull. This negative tone for critical reading cannot be inferred from the passage. Eliminate. Reader should get in the habit of questioning the truth of what they read. Like, always be skeptical. Not the point. Questioning the truth is not the basis of critical reading according to the paragraph. The best critical reading happens at critical times in a person's life, but not at other times when the person is chill or relaxed. Not mentioned anywhere in the passage. So yes, thoughtful and careful attention. Demanding process, slow down reading, specific operations, mark up your text. Everything point towards D, and all of you have answered it correctly. Direct to indirect speech again. AO chill accounts, you need to chill a little bit, maybe. Starfish with shotgun, you too. No. Please focus on what we have in front of us here. She said to him, please wait here till I return. So, please wait here till I return justifies the use of the reporting verb requested, but requests is not the correct form of the word. So you narrow it down to A, B and C. And she said to him. So her is not correct. D is out, A is out. And here becomes there, but I return. So the tense changes and the pronoun changes. I become she, first person to third person, and simple present becomes simple past. So returned is correct. We eliminate C for returns because the tense has not changed. So the answer is B. Correct. Moving on. Bird in the hand, blank worth 2 in the bush. Come on. This is just easy. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Overall, the proverb means like don't be greedy. And a bird in the hand is the subject. A bird is the subject, which is a singular noun. So obviously you would use a singular verb. On that basis, you would eliminate are and were. And then this is all proverbs are general unchanging truths. So all proverbs are supposed to be in the simple present tense. So was is not justified, but then you would know this proverb very well. So it's obviously is. Next. The question gives a word followed by 4 choices. From the choices, select the most suitable synonym word which means the same for the main word and mark its number as the answer. Palpable. So after the colleagues had stopped fighting, the tension in the office was palpable. Everyone could feel that tension. Everyone could experience it. But it was not necessarily something that you could see. So it was not visible. It's not something that you can hear. Like you look at people, the body language makes you anxious because you know that the situation is tense. But it's not something you hear. So it's not audible. And it would not be something that you present. So not presentable, but it would be perceivable. To perceive is to sense. Everyone could sense and feel that the atmosphere had become problematic and tense and people were on edge. So my answer here would be B. Important word. Okay, pick out the correct sentence from the following sentences. And so we have come back to that rule about subject, auxiliary verb or the helper verb or the helping verb doesn't. Did, didn't, does, doesn't has to be followed by the bare verb, the base form of the verb without the S. And then the rest of the sentence. So she doesn't likes, incorrect. And when you narrow it down to A and C, she doesn't like to get up, incorrect. The infinitive form would not be to gets up, it would be to get up. So the answer to this question is C. Next, right. So here we have a paragraph again. Just quickly take a few seconds and read it. Okay. Litigation is not always the only or best way to resolve conflicts. Mediation offers an alternative approach, and it is the only one that can be quite efficient and successful. Mediation can be faster, less expensive, can lead to create solutions not always possible in a court of law. Additionally, mediation focuses on mutually acceptable solutions rather than one winning or losing. Sir, are these PYQs? Yes, they are PYQs. I think we are at 2023 at this point. So this question is about, the paragraph is about mediation. It's an argumentative paragraph which says that mediation is somehow better than litigation in resolving conflicts. Mediation means intervention. You intervene, you talk to the two parties that are fighting with each other, and you try to help them find a middle path. So it's better than litigation. And then resolving conflicts, these are the only three keywords: mediation, litigation, and resolving conflicts. So yes, as all of you have answered correctly, the answer is D. Now, why did we eliminate the rest? Too much reliance on litigation. Paragraph best supports the idea that mediation is better than litigation, yes, but somehow people are only litigating. No one is thinking about mediating. So too much reliance on litigation cannot be inferred. It's not mentioned anywhere. Litigation is expensive, slow, limited by its reliance on following the letter of the law. So yes, mediation can be faster, expensive, and can lead to create solutions not always possible in a court of law, yes, but litigation has all of these problems because it follows the letter of the law, and in that it has become a less desirable option, cannot be inferred from the passage. Best way to resolve a crisis. Should always be wary of these superlative degrees, because that would make this an extreme statement. Extreme statements are generally grounds for elimination. But the answer is D, as most of you have correctly answered. Again, we have come to an idiom. Please don't spam the chat, guys. Let's just answer and move on. He requested her to reconsider the decision, but she put her foot down. So to put your foot down, agree to consider, ignore, listen very carefully, refuse to yield. So you have taken a decision and other people are trying to persuade you to change your mind, but then you hold your ground and you say that no, I've made my decision. This is the course that I will pursue. This is the college that I will go to. This is the specialization that I will go ahead with, and there's nothing you can say to change my mind. And I'm putting my foot down and you cannot do anything about it. So you refuse to surrender or yield or buckle under pressure. So the answer here is D. Agreed to consider, ignored, listen very carefully can be eliminated. Okay, all correct answers. Next. Ostensible. Again, select the suitable synonym for the word ostensible. Try to use it in a sentence. Even if you don't know the word, even if you don't know the exact meaning of the word, perhaps when you try to use it in a sentence, something at the back of your mind could help you form a valid and a correct sentence, because you may have come across that word over the years. So people are taking precautions across the country in terms of refraining from buying gold ostensibly to help the economy survive in this volatile period. So what is ostensible is what is visible or what is add आ गया. Yeah, so the answer here would be something which is apparent. It's a fairly commonly used word. Nothing to do with strong, desirable, or fateful. Fateful is a negative word. Ostensible is a neutral word. Strong, desirable are positive words. So here the tone could help you figure out the correct answer. When something happens ostensibly, it happens apparently. An ostensible reason for something is an apparent reason for something. So ostensible means apparent. Consider it. Select the most suitable now, in this case antonym, not a synonym but an antonym. Consider it. Positive tone. If you have the quality, it's a good thing. As some of you should be more considerate in this live chat. What should you not be then? So if you consider it, you worry about other people's issues. Again, you have the quality of empathy. You care for others. You think about what they are going through, and you are not detached or inconsiderate. So what you are not is indifferent. So being indifferent is just lack of concern, detachment, not caring at all. Comprehensive means complete or exhaustive. That's not an antonym. Atrocious means evil. That's not an antonym. Malignant means harmful, like a malignant tumor in the body. It has the root word mal. Not the answer. So the answer is D. Right. Next. Passive to active voice. Because if you have this preposition by followed by the agent, the sentence is in the passive voice. So put the receiver after the verb, that would be the letter. Put the doer before the verb, that would be the father. And put the verb where it is, that would be written. But you have to keep in mind the tense. Was written. Was is in the simple past tense, and this is the past participle of the main verb. So where did this come from? So what can we eliminate here? Was writing, past continuous, had written, past perfect. What do we need? The simple past tense. But when you use did, the auxiliary verb did, to indicate the simple past tense, you just use the base verb write. Did wrote, not correct. So the answer is C. Why did your father write such a letter? Easy enough. Next. Pick out the correct sentence from the following sentences. I hope the pace is okay now for the others as well, but tell me the answer. Yes. So as soon as you start reading the options, you will eliminate were. She were injured. you could use were in the past subjunctive mood if she were injured. But no, we are not talking about an imaginary situation here. Eliminate. Was replacing, past continuous tense, no reason to use that. Eliminate. Now the difference is had replaced and was injured. Past perfect and simple past, and again replaced and injured, simple past and simple past. And we use that rule, an earlier action should be in the past perfect tense, the later action should be a simple past tense. But when the focus is on the sequence, when we clearly want to indicate that one of those things happened much earlier, the other thing happened later, the focus is on the sequence, then we apply that rule about past perfect and simple past. It's a very important rule, it's there in your module. But no, that's not what we want to do. In everyday colloquial usage, we are only focusing on the replacement here, like who replaced her after she was injured. Both verbs in the simple past tense are absolutely acceptable here because you do not need to apply that rule unless it's absolutely necessary. Next, this question gives a word followed by 4 choices. From the choices, select the most suitable synonym for the main word and mark its number as the answer. Guys, why don't you focus on the questions, please? This may be the last long practice that you do before the last IPMAT that you take. Yeah, famish related to the word famine. Hunger, extreme hunger. Famished means extremely hungry. Not just like hungry because you had you didn't get time to have lunch, but over the days you've been starving because you don't even have any food. So then you would be famished or you would be hungry. Not agricultural, prestigious, something which is a sign of prestige, and something which is feasible, again, logical, possible. So yeah, hungry is the answer. Pick out the synonym of the word communicable. Now this has this very common root. Community, communion, communication, communism, communicable, they all have the same root, which means people, public, crowds. And we use communicable especially for diseases that spread quickly among individuals in a crowd because they are in close contact with one another. Commutation can mean traveling from home to work, work to home. It can also mean reducing a sentence, like a legal sentence. Understandable has nothing to do with that root. Communication, we use this word for diseases, so we cannot use communication here. And contagious. Now, contagious has 2 roots. Co means again together, and tangier, or which is related to the words tangible, something which can be touched. So when you touch other people and the disease goes from one person to another, it's a contagious disease or even a communicable disease. So the synonym was contagious. Next, reproach. Sir, I'm fooling around, sorry for that, but I'm also giving the answers. Well, as long as you give the answers, I'll take the win. Now, if your behavior is above reproach, this is how the word is normally used in day-to-day conversations. It means you do nothing wrong. It means there is no reason for others to criticize your actions, your behavior, and you are right in whatever you do. So then you are above reproach. So the word reproach is a negative word. He's my mentor. Who's your mentor? AO Chill Accounts. Is it one of the other students in the chat? Anyway, so what is the answer to this question? The answer would be reprimand, scold, criticize, berate. Appreciate is the opposite. It means admire. Understand is a neutral word. And to approach, again, it's like a trap option. Reproach would make you think that you're approaching someone again. Sir, you are? Who are you? I need to know who you are then. He put blank his departure for a week. Once again, we have come to prepositions. We have once again come to phrasal verbs. If you have studied phrasal verbs, you'd know the answer. For a week indicates that his departure was postponed. And which of these phrasal verbs means to postpone? Right. Now, put down. Put down can mean to suppress, uh, to euthanize, to upset someone. Put off. Put off. There is no such phrasal verb involving the verb put. Put on. It means to wear some clothes, to put on an act. It's a valid phrasal verb. But our answer is put off. Put off can again mean to annoy or irritate someone, but put off can also mean to delay or postpone something. That is our answer here. B is correct. Whoever answered B is right. Next, once again indirect. So see, we have had so many direct and indirect questions till now. You must not get a single one of those wrong. But I guess till now, if there's some question type that deserves your attention more in the coming days also, that would be the vocabulary question, synonyms, antonyms. Much significant. It's a very significant takeaway from today's session if you figure that out. He said, let us wait for the award. Now, when this comma after said, it's very important, it's necessary. A new quote begins with a comma. That is a very important rule. A missing comma would be a punctuation error. But when you change the speech from direct to indirect, that comma disappears and then a connector takes its place, the connector that. And when let us wait for the award is a proposal. So it's okay to use that reporting verb proposed. Not agreed. It's not an agreement. It's not like someone else proposed and this guy agreed. This guy proposed. So proposed him, not correct. The connector is missing. Proposed me and I does not come from this plural pronoun. So that plural pronoun is only here. He proposed that they should wait for the award. That's how you frame something which has been proposed. They should wait for the award. So our answer here is obviously B, as all of you have answered correctly. Next. Very simple. Cycle around the town. SP. That is our most prominent clue. Pair. Not here, not here. And you can't begin with R. Delivering food to customers. Shopkeepers would cycle around the town when I was young. Incorrect. When I was young is clearly the introductory phrase. So the answer is B. We've already covered this phrasal verb today. While going to Chandigarh, our car broke blank in midway. Now, he broke down in the middle of the speech. We have covered that question. It means to start crying, to become emotional. But then machines can also break down. It means they stop working. So, while going to Chandigarh, our car broke. So, cars don't break apart if they stop working. Cars don't break up. So, that's not the answer. Cars don't break into anything. Like people can break into a car to enter a car forcefully to steal something. So it's obviously breakdown. Simple. Read these statements. Tell me which sentence is correct. Come on, we'll soon come to a passage and then we'll pick up the pace even more. I'm Yes, which statement is correct? Hardly, oh, sorry. So, yes, had. The function got over when the crowd dispersed. Hardly have actually makes this incorrect. Plus than, hardly does not go with than. The function was not got over after the crowd was not got over. There is no such rule of grammar that justifies this construction. And hardly had got over the function. Here the order of the words is incorrect. Hardly had the function got over. That would have been correct, but the order is all wrong. But hardly has to go with when. And all the words are in the right place only in A. So we can eliminate B for than, C and D for the incorrect order of words. Next, give me the synonym or the best definition of the word gullible. So someone who's gullible is someone who can be easily fooled, someone who's very credulous, unsuspecting, easy to convince, like not someone who's simply amenable or flexible, but someone who can be taken advantage of. So it's a negative word, and that answer is obviously naive. Intelligent would be the opposite. Dishonest is a completely different word, and critical is someone who just criticizes everything, and that may not be a person who could be easily fooled. Next, correctly spelt word. Can you tell me the root word, the main root word in disaster? Nope. So that root word is aster. Uh, a root that is also there in words like astronaut, asterisk, astrology, astronomy. So it means a star. So basically a disaster is of course a catastrophe, but the reference is that when something bad happens, it's because the stars and the planets were not aligned. So it's a reference to astrology only ultimately, but disaster comes from that root word. Correctly spelled word, but it's incorrect. It would be a disaster with an ASTER. Deviation is incorrect. D means off, and via means a road or a route. So go off route is to deviate. And dormitory The root word is dorm, dormant, which means to sleep, but that's spelled with a T-O-R-Y. So that is an incorrectly spelled word. Disaster is an incorrectly spelled word. And our answer is documentation. So it's good to know the root words also of these words. Next. So again, we have come to active and passive voice. We'll finish. What we need is the simple future tense. The verb to be in the same tense, simple future, followed by the past participle of the verb, that is finished. Yes, the work will be finished. The verb to be in the simple future tense will be, and the past participle of the main verb. That was the rule. So this is the answer. Would be that fortnight. They both make A incorrect. Would be incorrect. Was finished, simple past tense, incorrect. And the answer is D. Next. Okay, now we have come to the passage. At first glance, the night was cold and dark. So how to glance at a passage is to read the first couple of sentences of every paragraph. The night was cold and dark. There was a great storm, thunder, lightning. There was a flock of birds in a tree nearby. One bird had a kind heart. So clearly this passage is easy, not abstract, not meant to be challenging, probably narrative with some message. Just quickly read it. Guys, please read the passage quickly. Let's not deviate from the main task. Okay. So the night was cold and dark. There was a great storm, thunder and lightning also. Most men and animals adequately protected were asleep in their homes. So great storm, thunder and lightning. They had no warm home. There was cold. Worried monkeys looked everywhere for shelter. They had almost resigned themselves to be flattened out by the cold. Worried monkeys looked everywhere for shelter. Okay, sorry, the sentences have been repeated. Suddenly they saw some fireflies. Fireflies have a light. The monkeys took the light for fire. They did not know any better. They said, "We will go near the fire and warm ourselves." There was a flock of birds in a tree nearby. One bird had a kind heart. It felt sorry for the monkeys. It called out, "That is not fire, my friends. Those are fireflies. They give no heat. It is futile. It is pointless to run after them." The monkeys got furious. Their rage knew no bounds. They did not thank the bird. One monkey said rudely, "Is it so? We do not want unsolicited advice that we did not ask for, something that was not requested. Advice. I will teach you to say there is no fire." He jumped up the tree, pulled the poor bird out of its nest. "Alas, regret," said the poor bird. It's a sign of regret. "Why did I try to help a fool?" Let's go to the questions. In the passage above, the night is described as, overall it has a negative tone. It was not lovely and attractive. It was not warm. It could be thunderous because there was a storm. There was no hunting being done. In fact, it was a cold and stormy night. If anything, it was unfit for hunting. And cold and stormy is very clearly given in the passage. Direct question. Moving on. Yes. Answer this one. What happens when you try to help a fool? What happened when the bird tried to help the monkey? The monkey pulled the bird out of its nest. So you invite danger for yourself. You do not get a lot of credit for it. The monkey did not thank the bird. The monkey did not befriend the bird. And you may not harm the fool, like the bird would not harm the monkey. So these are all grounds for elimination. And the answer is obviously C. Next. The monkeys were running through the forest because they blank. So the night was cold and stormy, and what the monkeys were looking for was not necessarily food, because they were attracted by the fireflies. It's not that they were looking for fruits on trees or something else that they could eat. Liked running, not mentioned anywhere. Wanted to kill the bird specifically, no. The monkeys were angry at this one bird who tried to help them when they did not ask for any help. But because the night was cold and stormy, they wanted warm shelter. So the answer is C. The bird tried to help the monkeys because she so the answer is B, was kind and felt sorry for them. The advice that the bird gave to the monkeys was unsolicited, but that's not the reason the bird tried to help the monkeys in the first place. When the bird helped, the bird gave them unsolicited advice. So not A. And the birds, I don't think, had anything to do with the fireflies. And distract the monkeys because they were planning something like a heist, or because they had some ulterior motive, not mentioned anywhere in the passage. Okay. Moving on. What are these comments? It's unfortunate. Come on, let's just. So there are more things in heaven and earth, blank, are dreamt of in our philosophy. So because you have the comparative degree more, of course you need the word than after it. So more than is correct. This was an easy question. Tell me what the correctly spelled word is here. So I believe now we have come to 2024 VA. I think by the end of this session, we'll be able to finish VA of 2024. Let's see where we end up. Right. So the first root is this, which means equal or balance or all sides. The second root is this, VOC or VOX, which means to talk, to speak. So to be equivocal is to speak from both sides, but to be unequivocal is to be very clear and take a very clear stand and not speak from both sides. But we need two L's, so A is incorrect. Unequivocally, ENE makes C incorrect. Uni makes D incorrect, and the answer is B. Next. An extra person, this card entitles with you for free, you to take. So entitles, again a word which we have already discussed, a privilege that you have. Entitles is followed by the subject that has the entitlement or the privilege in this case entitles you, because if you try to entitle that extra person, the sequence will not make sense. So QS is the most prominent pair here, which is not there here or here. So this card entitles you to take, now that is your privilege, that you take an extra person with you for free. So then PR is the remaining pair. So your answer is A. Right. Next. Now we have already done this, splitting the infinitive once again, which is not advisable. So you eliminate options where the infinitive has been split, as in to not perform is a split infinitive. Not to perform is okay. So eliminate C for the semicolon, eliminate D for decide because we need the past tense, and eliminate A for the split infinitive, and your answer is B. Next. Okay, hackneyed. Has an interesting story behind it. Not that interesting, but there's a story behind it, as is the case with many of these words. If you know how the word originated, you tend to always remember what it means. Tell me, what is the synonym of the word hackneyed? So, hackneyed, I think, comes from the word Hackney, which used to be a British town where you would get these horses that you could use to do these random menial, chores and tasks and errands and that anything that you would want. So there would be nothing special about those horses, and then the horses also came to be called Hackney, and named after the town where you would find those horses. That's the origin of this word. So hackneyed is anything which is unoriginal, boring, cliched, not important, horrible, or heightened. So the answer is C. Ideas can be hackneyed, tasks can be hackneyed, um, plans, anything can be hackneyed, boring or cliched. Next. A gentleman at large. At large. Someone who's not like confined to a particular place. Someone who can, what is split infinitive? So to perform is the infinitive, right? To plus verb is called an infinitive. Verb plus ing is called a gerund. And if you put something between the two words, to and the verb, it becomes a split infinitive. And this is not okay. So a gentleman at large is a man without a job, right? Choose the option which best replaces the underlined phrase. See if there's something wrong in the underlined part. So whenever you have a question which has a part underlined, it would have something to do with grammar. It's better if you spot the error in the question first, so it will be easier for you to find the answer. Read this and tell me what the answer is. What is the meaning of cliched? Cliched is anything which is unoriginal, repetitive, boring. Yes, sir, these are PYQs, but I think we have come to 2024. There is an error in the underlined part. No improvement is not the answer because of since. Since is used for the starting point. I've been working here since Feb of this year. For is used for a duration, and duration is what we have in 5 years. So we need for and not since, not since. But now here we come to that rule about an earlier action being in the past perfect tense. The later action, simple past, came. The earlier action, past perfect continuous, which is a type of past perfect tense. So that rule still applies. So we need had been, not have been teaching. Present perfect continuous tense is not what the rule is about. So eliminate, eliminate, eliminate. And the answer is B. JIPMAT will have these type of questions, right? Yes, JIPMAT will have these type of questions. So please do grammar questions. Yes, that's what we are doing. Dilate. So we have to look for the antonym of the word now. Yes, the VA of JIPMAT is easy to moderate. I hardly think it's difficult. So dilate, for example, cold water is supposed to help your blood vessels dilate. So it means expand, expand especially in diameter. So the opposite of that, to become smaller, would be contract. That's our answer. Dilute is a very similar word but could be confusing. Dilute is to reduce the strength of something, especially liquid, by adding something. Differentiate and expand. So differentiate is unrelated, but expand is a synonym, but because we have to look for an antonym, we are going with contract. Foreign phrases that are used in English. You need not actually have studied that foreign language to understand the meaning of the phrase. The English language frequently borrows phrases from other languages. The two most common languages being Latin and then French. And then there's Japanese, Italian, Spanish, German. But if they ask you the meaning of foreign phrases in the exam, it's probably going to be from Latin or French. And this is Latin. Ultra has a meaning. Virus has a meaning. For example, the word virulence or virulent in English has been derived from this root. It means power or strength. When a vaccine, when a medicine, more than a medicine, a vaccine is virulent, it's strong. And ultra means beyond. So beyond someone's power or beyond someone's jurisdiction. Juris, which means law, and diction comes from the root word for speaking, but it means the same thing. It means beyond someone's strength. When you implement a decision, when you do something that you did not have the authority or the power to do, so it was beyond your power. And the opposite of that would be intra vires. Something within your capacity or power would be intra vires. But you cross a line when you implement a decision that is ultra vires. So that would be D. So this would help you if you knew the root words. Pick the odd one out. So we are looking for a dummy phrasal verb, like a phrasal verb which is not valid. 3 of these are correct and they can be used to mean different things. Yes. So by this point, another takeaway has to be phrasal verbs. There's a very concise chapter on phrasal verbs in the vocabulary builder. Please do your best with that chapter. Cover as many of them as you can. So the answer is plan in. That is not a valid phrasal verb derived from the verb plan. Plan for. So for example, you plan for your retirement. You plan for your old age. You make preparations. Plan on. I plan on taking a leave next week. Something that you're anticipating, planning to do. Plan out. You plan out a party or an event. Go decide the basics of something. They are all valid phrasal verbs, but not D. So D is the answer. It's the odd one out. One word substitution. Slightly easier than a simple basic like a synonym antonym question, because you have an entire meaning, you have to find the word for it. One who does not care for literature or art, which means we need a negative word here. The answer has a biblical origin. We'll not get into the origin as such, but yeah, it's pretty commonly used even today. So that answer would be yes, as some of you have correctly answered, Philistine. A Philistine is someone who does not care for literature or art. Primitive is basic, undeveloped. Hypocrite is someone who does not practice what he preaches. You preach a set of ideals to other people. You should do this, you should do that, you should not indulge in bad habits, but then you indulge in those habits and you do the opposite of what you preach or what you say. So then you're a hypocrite. And dictator, which comes from the root word dict, to speak. You must do as the person says. So that would be a dictatorship. But your answer is Philistine. All the teachers and students blank this book. So it's a verb. Our subject is plural, students and teacher. So we cannot use the singular verb likes. We cannot use just the word liking. There's no helper verb before liking. All the students and teachers liking this book is not correct. All the teachers and all the students and teachers are like this book. There's no comparison between students, teachers on the one hand and a book on the other hand. It's about what they're feeling. We are talking about the verb of liking, a verb of emotion. So B. And it has to be plural because your subject is plural. Give me the answer here. Select the correct tense. In a few minutes time, when the clock strikes 6, in a few minutes time, here for an hour. These are parts of the sentence which clearly indicate what the tense of the verb should be. The intention of the sentence is to tell you that a certain point in the future, at a certain point in the future, in a few minutes time, this action will be complete. My waiting for an hour will be complete. So what I need is the future perfect tense, and that is B. So that's future perfect continuous. As in, beyond what we discussed, the sentence is also indicating that the action will still continue at that point in the future. So future perfect is right. Shall have waited, we don't have. We just have an option which indicates that yes, but the action will still be ongoing. By next month, I will have been working at this organization for 8 years. So I'm referring to this whole time of 8 years, but I'm telling you that at that point in the future, that span of 8 years would be complete. At this point in the future, that span of 1 hour would be complete, but the activity will go on. So we'll go with the future perfect continuous, not continuously. I'm so sorry. Future perfect continuous. So the answer is B. Next, passive. Will drop. Simple future. So the verb to be in the simple future plus the past participle of the main verb dropped. What's the answer? Come on, we have done enough of these questions. Tell me. So that is obviously D. Because is dropping, present continuous tense, not right. Dropping you at the airport will be done by the taxi. Dropping you at the airport is incorrect construction, and will be dropping, this tense is also incorrect. We just need the simple future tense, so that would be will drop. The coach said, well done. Well done is praise. That's a way of applauding someone or praising them. That's why we have changed the reporting verb to applaud among the options. You have made me proud. Have made, present perfect tense. Should change to the past perfect tense. The coach is speaking to the person in the other person, the other guy in the second person. So the pronoun will change to the third person and the tense will change to the past perfect. And where do we have both of these things? Which option? Tell me. Yes. Applauded and said is okay, but applauds and says, the reporting verb is not generally in the simple present tense. The actual quote is also not being reported in the simple present tense. So we eliminate this. Says, has made him proud. You did not change the tense from present perfect. So eliminate C. Still the wrong tense, which means our answer is D. The wrong tense in A, B and C. Exclamation mark. There goes the bell. So you are expressing this emotion strongly. It's not a straightforward, blunt statement. It's not a question mark. It's not something which is going to be elaborated, but it's just an exclamation. So let's just move on. The answer is an exclamation mark. Correct spelling. Come on now. If you can't spell this at this point, what is the point of everything? So dis-ease, when you're not at ease, is when you have a disease. So we need dis and we need ease in our answer. So the answer is D. Moving on. Yeah. Now we have come to a phrase again, an expression or an idiom. Yeah. So give me answers for this one. So soon we are crossing the 37 kilometer, 35 kilometer mark in our full marathon. Now after this, I think we'll have one more passage and then we'll go really fast. Should spending on the arts be met out of the public purse? Art enthusiasts is something that stands out for being obviously very irrelevant. Public purse have nothing to do specifically with art enthusiasts. Meant to be distributed to the poor and needy? Not true. There's no indication that the money is meant for poor and needy. And donation, that it has come from donation, that's not what the expression means. Now, the thing is, you just have to know what it means. Like, it has been established, the usage has been established of these idioms, these phrases. So anything apart from that established usage is incorrect. Our answer is D, government money. Money that was collected as taxes from the general public, yes, but then now it's government money. So money that ideally came from the public but now belongs to the government. National anthem is being sung by the players. Again, I'll get through this one quicker. Is being sung. So this is in the passive voice. Your verb to be is in the present continuous tense, is being, and your main verb, the past participle, is sung. So I need is singing in my answer, or are singing, depending on the subject, whether it's singular or plural. But we do not need the past continuous, that is in A. We do not need the simple present, that is in C. And we do not need the present perfect, that is in D. The present continuous tense, are singing, it's plural because of the plural subject players, is only in B. So our answer is B. Yes, this is a question type which has appeared in previous years more frequently in the JIPMAT. So you should read it. I'll take you through this whole set once, so just pay attention. Now, this is a simple fill in the blanks question type, but it's what we call a closed test. Fill in the blanks question type in the form of a set. It's advisable that you read the whole passage first so that you can frame shadow answers, you understand what the paragraph is about. And the questions following this particular paragraph can be jumbled. Like a first question may ask you the answer to blank number 3, then blank number 1, then blank number 4, then blank number 2. They do not generally go in sequence. So be very careful when you read this question in the exam. Are people blank or even typically guided by reason rather than say by passion or impulse? So we need an adverb for the verb guided, something that is probably the opposite of typically because of the preposition, the conjunction or. If the norms of rational behavior are not followed by people in their actual behavior, how can we seek the same answer to two rather different questions? What would be rational for a person to do and what would the person actually do? So the first word actually has to be an adverb for the verb guided, something in contrast to typically. So for our first question, it could only be invariably. Invariable in A is an adjective. Invariably is an incorrectly spelled word. It doesn't mean anything. Invariability is a noun. The adverb form is only in the second option. But now we have come to the fourth blank. So let's just read the paragraph now. Shouldn't the economist who makes such double use of maximization, whether through explicit reasoning or by implicit assumption, that's my shadow answer because they're opposite ideas, opposite concepts, be invited to apply their minds to this? A number of economists have indeed paid attention to systematic departures from rationality in actual choices made by people. One argument that has been invoked in a line of reasoning proposed by Herbert Simon goes by the name of bounded rationality. It concerns the possibility that people may not in all cases look for fully rational choices, probably because your rationality has been bounded. There is a limit to your rational thinking or your rationality. So they may not be fully rational choices because of their inability to be sufficiently focused. There is considerable evidence presented. For example, blank. So we need a preposition which goes with presented. It's going to be by. And here we have our answer for this blank, by. Powerful evidence, considerable evidence, powerfully presented by Kahneman, Slovic, Tversky that people may fail to understand adequately the nature of uncertainty. Two more blanks remaining. So here we have come to blank number 3. It concerns the possibility that people may not in all cases look for fully blank choices. So we need an adjective for the noun choices. So it cannot be rationally, which is an adverb. It cannot be rationality, which is a noun. But then we have rational and rationale. So rationale is also a noun. It means your logic, your rational thinking, your reasoning behind some of your actions. What was your rationale behind your decision? But that's not an adjective, it's a noun. And we need an adjective for the noun choices, so that would be A. And the last word for blank 2, explicit reasoning or implicit presumption, because explicit, implicit, they are opposite ideas of each other. So we need a conjunction which connects those opposite ideas. Clear outward reasoning or inward presumption, things that we are assuming, things that have not been clearly given. So only the conjunction or could fit in that blank. So this question type has started appearing in the past years. When you look at the question, just make sure that you read the question properly so that you know which blank you have to fill, because they can be shuffled after this question type. Okay, we come to another RC now. Quickly read this passage in a couple of minutes and then we'll go to the questions and figure out the answers. A couple of minutes, please. After this passage, we'll just go super fast. I'll take you through the remaining questions, the shorter ones. I'll just quickly explain and then You just have like another half an hour to go. So hang in there. Now, the point of reading this passage is to understand how to prepare the thought flow of the passage by engaging properly. Often, when you come to, if you're doing this section at the end, it's possible that you might come to the passage at the very end of the whole exam as you are reading this. I think someone had asked earlier, should you do RC questions or non-RC questions first? Now, I'll tell you what my logic is. When I used to take these exams as a student, I used to solve the non-RC questions first because I realized that I could get through the vocabulary and grammar questions quickly. You could solve them in a few seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And I would be left with a lot of additional time that I could devote to the passage. Sometimes that is just my logic, that's not the right way. But what I would experience is if I started with the passage, I would end up giving it a disproportionate amount of time, more time than it deserved, and that would take away that time from the other question types. So that's one way to look at it, and that's my reasoning, to solve the non-RC questions first and then go to the passage. But then again, the passages in JIPMAT are not that challenging. Someone please let me know when you're finished with the passage. Just type done in the live chat. Who is this Aryan Potty? What rubbish are you speaking on the chat? Sorry. What is this? Okay. Let's discuss the question. Let's discuss the passage. All great thinkers live and move on a high plane of thought. It is only there they can breathe freely. It is only in contact with spirits like themselves they can live harmoniously and attain that serenity which comes from ideal companionship. I have always thought that the strongest argument in favor of the Baconian theory, which states that Francis Bacon may have written all the plays that are attributed to Shakespeare because he was more educated. I have always thought that the strongest argument in favor of the Baconian theory was that no man, however indubitable in his genius, indubitable is something which cannot be doubted, his genius cannot be doubted, could have written the plays and sonnets, the poems, 14-line poems, that have come down to us under Shakespeare's name, who had not the liberal education of Bacon. How this habit of intercourse with the gods makes one impatient of mere men. You're talking about ascending to a higher plane because of your education in that last sentence. The magnificent ideals that have ever haunted the human mind and given us our biggest proofs of a future immortality by reason of impossibility of their fulfillment here are splintered into atoms by contact of life's realities. Life's reality stops you from building castles in the air, and that tells you how life is so fleeting. So all ideas of future immortality get shattered when you understand life's realities. Hence comes our sublime discontent, lack of satisfaction. It may be spiritual or intellectual pride that is engendered on the high plane of intellectual life, but whatever it is, it becomes inevitable. We're still continuing the same idea, how life's reality shows us the true picture. habitual meditation on the vast problems that underlie human life and are knit into human destinies, it's easy to understand, therefore, why such thinkers fly to the solitude of their own thoughts or the silent companionship of the immortals. And if they care to present their views in prose or verse to the world, that these views take a sombre, serious, and melancholy setting, sad setting from the pale cast of thought in which they were engendered. Pale cast of thought, this phrase also comes from Hamlet, if I'm not wrong. It means sometimes people overthink so much that it drains all of their positivity, their energy out of them, all of their boldness, their spark, everything is gone because they just overthink. Okay. Why great thinkers live and move on a higher plane of thought? Because how life's realities make them sad and depressed. That's broadly what the passage is about. Let's look at the answers to these questions. Given below are two statements. So this is a different format. Pay attention because this could come in the exam. But it's not difficult. There are two statements and the options ask you which ones are correct or incorrect. The author upholds the Baconian theory because, according to him, despite being a genius, Shakespeare could not write the plays and sonnets that have come down to us under his name. Yes, that's there in the first paragraph. My strongest argument in favor of the Baconian theory was no man could have written the plays and sonnets that have come down to us under Shakespeare's name without the liberal education of Bacon. So, one is correct. So, I will eliminate this. Okay. Statement 2 says he holds that Bacon was more resourceful than Shakespeare because he had the liberal education. Yes, that same part of the first paragraph indicates that. So 2 is also correct. So we'll eliminate this, and our answer has to be A. Given below are two statements. One is labeled as an assertion. Now, what is this question type? An assertion is a claim, and the second statement is meant to be its explanation or its reason. That's the format of the question type. Now, before you even read the statements, look at the options. Both assertion and reason are correct, and reason is the correct explanation of A. Both of them are correct, but reason is not the correct explanation of A. A is correct, but R is not correct. A is not correct, but R is correct. So, the first thing that you have to figure out based on the passage, are these statements correct or not? If they are both correct, the next thing to do is figure out whether the reason explains the first statement, the claim, the assertion or not. And that claim is the passage presents a rationale behind the great writer's flight to the solitude of their thoughts and silent companionship of immortals. Yes, because they get frustrated by common men. The passage abundantly clarifies that. A is correct. R says they do so because they are melancholic, naturally averse to ordinary humanity, disgust of unregenerated masses. Fine, they are melancholic. Okay, they are sad. But disgust of unregenerated masses, disgust, that is too strong. That is not there in the passage. They don't like their company. They like to spend time with like-minded people or in solitude, but they don't like the company of ordinary men, but they're not disgusted by them. So my answer has to be A is correct, but R is incorrect. One more question. According to the author, why do the great thinkers need to attain and remain at high plane of thought? So if you have read the passage properly, can I have some answers for this question? Can you venture a guess? Then I'll discuss quickly. Yeah, so we have crossed the 38 kilometers mark at this point, 4 kilometers to go out of our 42 kilometers. Come on, let's go. Let's push. At this point, it's all in the mind. like an actual marathon? Come on, someone give me an answer to this question. Because this requires you to engage with the passage more closely. RCs, how many marks? So you have 4 to 8 questions of RC in the JIPMAT. You can have one or maximum 2 passages. Okay. All right. Let's see. According to the author, why do the great thinkers need to attain and remain at high plane of thought? Because they want to enjoy harmony and serenity from ideal companionship. Uh, Sorry. Yes. The first sentence. It is only in contact with spirits like themselves they can live harmoniously and attain that serenity which comes from ideal companionship. So A is definitely a part of my answer. I will eliminate B. And because the experience of greatness makes them impatient of being ordinary men, that has also been mentioned in the passage. So I want B in my answer as well. I'll eliminate the third option at this point. Because the high plane of intellectual life instills a spiritual and intellectual pride in them. Now, if you look at C and D, D says because they are apathetic to commoners and solely eager to attain lofty ideals. Extreme statement. Solely eager to attain lofty high ideals, ideals that standards that are hard to achieve. That has not been given in the passage. So I do not want D in my answer. So by the process of elimination, I am left with the first option here. The passage was not difficult here, but it was necessary that you engaged with the questions better here. These were scoring questions for sure if you just put your mind to it. Now we have discussed what the pale cast of thought means. It means when someone overthinks and it's paralysis through analysis. That's the phrase, more relevant phrase for it. So when you overthink so much that it drains all of your energy and spark everything, that's called a pale cast of thought. So the answer is D. Okay. Uh, Idioms, expressions once again. So let's quickly finish this part. Up for grabs. When something is up for grabs, when someone is offering you something, when we are sitting in a group, we are eating something, and then someone says, okay, the last slice of the pizza are up for grabs. It's available for anyone interested. If you look at the right hand side. So A has to go with 4 and you only have one option which has that. So you could quickly mark D. Make hay while the sun shines. So B has been paired with 3, to use opportunities while they last. Opportunity is the sun and to use them is to make hay, dried grass. Go haywire. Now go haywire. Now in the actual exam this word was misspelt. H-E-Y W-I-R-E. But no, it's H-A-Y-W-I-R-E. It also comes from the same word hay that's there in B. And a springy wire that used to be tie bales of hay that was notoriously difficult to control. When it would go out of control, that is where the expression came from, to go haywire. So to become out of control, and to get off lightly is to be punished less severely than expected. This is yet another question type that you can get in the exam. Match list 1 with list 2. So what you have is the word all, which is there in all the 4 statements on the left hand side. On the right hand side, you have 4 parts of speech. Give me the correct answer. I guess connecting the first pair itself will give you the answer quickly here, correctly. Good, I guess a couple of serious test takers are left. We just have like another 10-15 minutes to go. So come on, keep pushing, answer quickly so that we can move on. So all men are mortal. So the word men is a noun, and the word all, as it comes right, any word that comes right before a noun describing the noun is an adjective. So A has to go with 4. And that's how we get our answer here. He was all alone when I saw him. Now, alone is an adjective which describes him, the guy, but all describes the adjective alone. So, a word which describes an adjective is an adverb. So, B goes with 3. All spoke in his favor. Here, all is the subject of the verb spoke. It replaces the actual names of the people who spoke. The subjects of verbs can only be nouns or pronouns. And it's not a noun here, so it's a pronoun. And he lost his all. So just like losing an object, he's lost his wallet, he's lost his phone, he lost his pen, he lost his book. Similarly, he lost his all. The word all here plays the role of a noun. So the first answer is correct. Once again, we have come to grammatical errors. Easy question, scoring question. Give me the answer here. Economist were of the opinion. Economist is clearly a positive, a singular noun. You cannot use the plural verb with a singular noun. And we have to look for the mistakes or the errors. So A has to be a part of my answer. I'll let go of the third and the fourth option. The government should give longer times to farmers. More time. More time is what you want, not longer times. So there you have your second error. Yeah, that's the answer. To pay the loan instead of waiving the entire farm loan. Correct. Correct answers. Yeah. A very basic question, but please give me the answer. Whoever is still hanging in and answering questions at this point, just you have my huge respect. You sat through 3 hours, and if you're still answering the questions, I absolutely have to commend your seriousness about the exam. Okay, so I shall speak is the simple future tense. If you look at the remaining options, A has to go with 2. So eliminate first and fourth option. I shall have spoken at some point in the future. This action will get over. That would be the future perfect tense. So B has to go with 4. This is the answer. C. Yes, I have one correct answer. Rearrange the statements in the right sequence. Give me the sequence. Now we are going to cross the 40 kilometers mark, and in the last 2 kilometers, after you cross the 41-kilometer mark in a marathon, you just sprint, you go for it. You get your last wind, you use up all of your remaining fuel, and you just go for it. You just shoot your shot, you don't care what happens. And that's what we are going to do in the next 7 to 8, 10 minutes. We are just going to sprint now. Okay, I'll do the sprinting for you. You just keep up with me. You just keep up with all the explanations and the answers, and then in hardly 7 to 8 minutes, we'll have completed the marathon. All right, so here the answer is, almonds are commonly called nuts, but they are actually seeds. That I believe is the first pair that stands out to me. So I can eliminate this one. But they're actually seeds, and because of and, I'll have to put D over here. They come from a tree, and tree here will take you to this peach tree, the tree that is closely related to the peach tree. So I immediately get BCD as my answer, and that is my second option. Okay, here we have slightly longer sentences. Come on. You give me the answer. Try to connect pairs. Try to find what could be the starting statement. This is the first proper jumbled paragraph question that we have come across. When you look for a starting statement, you eliminate statements that cannot begin the sequence because they have some word that's clearly continuing an idea or is referring to a thing, a noun, a person, a place which has already been mentioned in a previous sentence. So for that we need people who possess not only high skills but high values. For what? We don't know that. A cannot begin the sequence. Let go of the second option. So the need of the hour is not only skill-based education, but also value-inspired and value-based education. So you're drawing a conclusion here. That's not what you do when you begin sequences, but we don't have an option which begins with B. When we talk of investing, now C and D, they could both be the starting statement, but if you read them more closely, it'll become very obvious which one begins the sequence. When we talk of investing in education, a question arises as to what kind of education needs to be given to the youngsters. Why did this question arise? Because we have a vision, we have a plan. Our aim is to evolve not only an affluent society but also an egalitarian. Egalitarianism is a society based on equality, just humane and compassionate society. Now this is why the question arises in the first place. What kind of education needs to be given to the youngsters? Because we want them to be a part of an affluent society and an egalitarian, humane, just and a compassionate society. So C must begin the sequence. D elaborates the question mentioned in C. D kind of answers the question mentioned in C. CD is a very prominent pair. It's not here, it's not here, and we get our answer here. For what? So that we can have this society. For that, we need people who possess not only high skills but high values as well. And once you've mentioned values here, once you've mentioned opened the door to values because you wanted egalitarianism, humaneness, compassion, and then you use this as a concluding statement using so. So the need of the hour is not only skill-based education but also value-inspired education, which comes from this value, and value-based education. If the options were different, if they were more confusing, this is the trail that we would follow. But here they are not difficult at all. This set is not difficult at all. So the answer is D. Okay, now comes the final sprint. And I will sprint, you just keep up with me. Pick the word with the correct spelling. Lieutenant or lieutenant, which comes from the root word lieu, in lieu of, if you have heard this phrase, which means in place of, in the place of. And tenant is like a placeholder. A lieutenant or a lieutenant, this is what the correct spelling is. Option B. Everywhere else it has been misspelled. Identify the error in the sentence given below. After knowing truth, they took the right decision in the matter and punished the real culprits. Everywhere this definite article is there and it's absolutely required, but this is a specific truth that we have come to know, but the article is missing there. And because of that missing article, our error is in the first option. The patient died despite he received the best medical help from the hospital staff. Now, despite here is a preposition, and this would be followed by a verb in the ing form. Despite receiving would have been correct, right? So, despite he had received is the part that has the error. So, our answer is B. Choose the option which best replaces the underlined phrase. Happy is the man who acquired, this is the phrase which has been underlined, the habit of reading when he is young. Happy is the man, simple present. When he is young, simple present. So why to use this simple past here? So we just need the simple present tense, which could be this or this, but man is singular, and for that we need a singular verb, and that is in A. Acquire is singular, acquire is plural. Idioms. not to mince matter. What do you do when you mince something? You cut it into small parts. What are we talking about mincing when we say we mince matters? It means maybe we have something very overwhelming and serious to tell someone, but we divide it into small bite-sized parts so that they can digest all our words and our information. But no, I don't want to do that. What do I want to do then? I want to speak out plainly. So I'll go with D. Not to mince matters is to speak out plainly. The answer is not negative, the idiom is. Where discipline is concerned, I put my foot down, and we've already come across this idiom earlier. So there is no such thing as a shaky stand, because then you will, if you put your foot down and if it's a shaky stand, you will probably fall. Light stand, not a thing. Firm and heavy. Now, what does our idiom have to mean? That you hold your ground. You can't be moved. So heavy is not enough. It has to be firm, unmoving. The heavy things can be moved, but heavy stand is not an accepted expression. So our answer is A. Keep sprinting, just a few more minutes to go. One who is indifferent to pain or pleasure, one who does not feel anything. What is the word for that? Yeah, tell me what is the word for that. Because this is a set of words that are slightly out of the ordinary. So yeah, I'd want you to think about the answer here. Anyway, eccentric, the opposite of concentric. Concentric. Symmetry is considered good, normal. Eccentric, circles that don't share the same center. Asymmetry, it's considered abnormal. So eccentric means out of the ordinary, quirky, odd, weird. Philosopher, philo, root word for love. Sophia, root word for wisdom. So someone who loves wisdom, who considers himself or herself an intellectual, would be a philosopher. Fatalist, fate. What is fate? Fate says that everything that's going to happen in your life has already been predetermined and you can't do anything about it. You just have to live out your life as part of a story that has already been written. So you don't have free will. So then you are a fatalist. But someone who can't feel any pain or any pleasure is stoic. That's our answer here. Misappropriation of money. Money that was entrusted to you to get some job done. To buy some equipment, to take care of some project, but you did not use the money for that purpose. You had bad intentions and you stole that money and you used it for your personal reasons. You put it in your personal account. You did not steal it forcefully, but so it's not robbery or theft. Stealing funds that have been entrusted to you and then using it for another reason, specifically there is a word for that, and that word is embezzlement. Fraud can be, it comes in different forms. Specifically, it may not be misappropriation of money. A behavior can be fraudulent, words can be fraudulent, actions can be fraudulent. That may not have anything to do with money. So our word is embezzlement. Pick the antonym of colossal. Colossal is gigantic, huge, massive. The opposite of that would have something to do with being very small, minute or tiny. Vast and epic are kind of related to the word colossal, and rust, irrelevant. So my answer is C. Pick the odd one of the following options. One more phrasal verb, one more question related to a phrasal verb, important. So we are looking for a phrase which is not a valid phrase. And that answer is strip against. Strip off. Strip off is not necessarily a phrasal verb, but a strip of land connects the two oceans, or a strip of sand is outside the balcony is a strip of sand, and then the ocean. So you can use it. Strip off, to take something away from someone. You strip off some honor that you have given to someone. You strip off someone's privileges. Strip away, take something away, take something off. Something strips away. but strip against, that is not a valid phrase. Another punctuation question. Once again, it's a statement which expresses a strong emotion. What a good man he is. It's not a straightforward statement. Not a question, is not meant to be elaborated. So it needs an exclamation mark. So the answer is C. Some forms of feminisms have been criticized for take into account only white, middle class and college educated perspectives. Preposition which is for followed by gerund, verb plus ing. For taking into, that is the rule. So my answer is B. Synonym of proscribe. We are soon approaching the very last question. Give me the synonym of proscribe. I'd like to discuss the root words of this one anyway. So pro, before. Scribe, write. So this comes from an old practice of writing down the names of people who have been condemned, people who are criminals, people who are wanted. And this comes from the West, like from the US. And then putting them out in the open in front of people for everyone to know who has been condemned or who has been banned from entering the town or who has been prohibited from taking part in any festivals or any processes or any decision making related to the city or the town or the village. So that would be to forbid. You know what torture is. Progressive is something which is a sign of progress, and elemental is something which means very basic. And this will be the last question for today's marathon. Please take a few moments and give me this answer, and then we'll stop. Why not full stop? Because for full stop, the statement had to be a very straightforward sentence. He is a very wonderful man. You know, imagine saying this statement out loud. You would not express any emotion even on your face when you say this. That is a blunt, straightforward sentence. That would need a full stop. But then when you phrase it like this, what a wonderful man he is, that clearly expresses amazement, excitement, awe. And that strong expression of emotion requires an exclamation mark. So that's why you put an exclamation mark here. All right. What is the answer to this last question? The blank of new projects in the energy sector is blank not only on low cost or profitability of the project, but also on sustainability. So, the most obvious clue here is this preposition, on. Possible on? No. Vulnerable, prone on? No. Premised on? Maybe. But when you use the word premise, it means based on, and you use it for arguments, logic. This argument is premised on the assumption that, of course, you can use dependent on also, but a premise is a statement of fact. So something that you have assumed, you use it for information, you use it when it comes to arguments. Dependent on, yes, but the problem with the second option is the word occurrence. We are talking about launching projects or initiating projects. Those projects don't just occur out of the blue. So because of occurrence, we can eliminate B, and we end up with this third option as an answer. All right. That brings us to the end of our marathon. My sincere thanks to everyone who was hanging in there for 3 hours and who answered all the questions. But if there are any last minute questions or doubts in general, you may ask now, or we will conclude this meeting in a couple of minutes. Please let me know if you have any last minute questions. Okay, and everyone who is still hanging in and everyone who attended the session earlier, Again, kudos to everyone who showed up today in the first place. Looks like there are no last minute questions. So I'd like to end this session by wishing good luck to all of you for the last IPMAT of this year. And I'll also like to wish you all the best for your interviews after that and your wherever you end up, all of your future endeavors. So all the best for everything. Thanks a lot for attending.